Alright, Meat Shields. Imagine winning the most insane death game ever created, only to go right back and do it all over again. Well, that's exactly what our boy Gi-hyun here is about to do, only this time, the other players are even more twisted, and the games are more lethal than anything he's seen before. We're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat every death game in Squid Game Season 2. Ex-gambler Gi-hyun here is the only survivor of a brutal death game hosted by a secret society of wealthy elites. Winning made him rich beyond his wildest dreams, but instead of taking the money and moving on with his life, he decided that he wants revenge. And that's going to be his biggest mistake. Realizing that he's being tracked, he feels around until he finds a microchip hidden behind his left ear, and after a quick back alley surgery, he yanks that bad boy out so that they can't track his location. Meanwhile, Detective Jun-ho wakes up in the hospital after being shot by his own brother, who had been running the games as the front man this whole time. 2 years go by with him trying to explain what happened on the island, but no one on the force believes his story without any hard evidence, and he decides not to tell anyone that his brother was involved. Remember those guys that Gi-hyun owed money to? It turns out that they work for him now, and he's been using them to help track down the recruiter, hoping that he can lead them back to the games. One night, Gi-hyun decides that they need to look harder, telling the boss to get all his men to check every single train station in the city for an entire day. The next morning, he assembles all his minions together and sends them out into the city, promising whoever finds the man a reward of 500 million won. While Gi-hyun watches the roof of a parking garage, the criminals search every station high and low looking for the Takji man. But even after searching all day, there's still no sign of their target. Okay, Gi-hyun here is going about this all wrong, and I'll explain why. He wants to finally put a stop to the games, but he's been searching for a whole 2 years without finding any sign of this guy. And it all comes down to a major flaw in his strategy. Seoul is the largest city in South Korea, with a population of over 25 million people if you include the surrounding metropolitan area. Its subway system is also one of the busiest in the world, with 23 different lines and over 300 stations that all have multiple different entrances and exits. On an average day, the largest hubs see hundreds of thousands of commuters, and there can be as many as 7 to 8 million riders across the whole city. With the constant hustle and bustle of the stations, finding one guy out of the million would be like finding a needle in a haystack. He hasn't had any luck because finding anybody with this strategy is almost impossible. But that's why he needs to remember one very important detail. You don't find the Squid Game. The Squid Game finds you. It all comes back to something that Mr. Kim mentioned before, about how the people who owe him money keep on disappearing. Instead of paying criminals to search the stations, he should be paying down on their luck passengers and gamblers for information. Sooner or later, the recruiter will approach them with an offer to join the games. Then they can snitch to Gi-hyun and let him know where to find the guy so he can set up his ambush. He's offering 500 million won to whoever finds the recruiter, but random passengers on the subway would be a lot cheaper to pay off, and it would be a much quicker way of finding him than aimlessly searching every station. Just when they're about to give up, Kim and his associate Woo-suk hear a loud slap from down the tunnel, and sure enough, there's the recruiter smacking the soul out of some poor guy on the other side of the platform. Calling Gi-hyun, he immediately starts speeding over there while they follow the man out of the station, telling them not to let him out of their sight. Strangely, the man heads down to a park with 2 bags full of bread and lottery tickets, approaching any unfortunate person he sees and letting them choose one or the other. Most of them choose the lottery ticket, but they all end up losing, and after everyone's had their turn, he takes the leftover bread and just starts stomping it out right in front of them, doing it just to prove that they all made the wrong choice. Gi-hyun misses his chance when he gets pulled over for speeding by Jun-ho and his partner, but the criminals manage to track the man down to a secluded alley. They chase him around a corner, but as soon as they're out of sight, he easily takes both of them down with just his briefcase. And when they finally wake up, they realize that he's taken both of them hostage. Putting on a record, he tells the men that they're going to play rock, paper, scissors -1. but with a twist. Because the loser of each round has to play Russian roulette next. Refusing to play dead means you're automatically disqualified, but the game isn't over until one of them is dead. And holding the weapon between them, he tells the criminals to start. The game goes back and forth with neither side managing to win, so to speed things up, the recruiter loads 4 more rounds into the cylinder. All of a sudden, Woo-suk makes a mistake, allowing Kim to win either way, but instead, the boss refuses to play, deciding to lose on purpose so that his friend can survive.
Okay, this guy is seriously fucked up, and Woo-suk here would have been done for if his boss hadn't let him win. It's going to be pretty hard to think straight when you wake up tied to a chair and get told that your life is riding on a game of rock, paper, scissors. But just like always, the key to survival here is staying calm and assessing the threats one at a time. The danger here comes from the Russian roulette part of the challenge, because every time you have to play, you have at least 1 in a 6 chance of being killed. But you won't have to take those odds as long as you never lose a game of rock, paper, scissors. Now, if both players are choosing completely at random, then there's no way to give a decisive advantage, but the thing is, humans aren't random. With modern technology, programmers have developed complex algorithms designed to give them the best chance at a winning game of rock, paper, scissors. And they found that the most reliable strategy is to use history matching and frequency analysis based on your opponent's past performance. There's no way that you're going to be as accurate as a machine, but the key here is to watch your opponent for any patterns that stick out, like a favorite combination that they like to use, or which hand they retract the most often during the -1 part of the round. For example, if you notice that your opponent is always throwing paper after they throw rock, then anticipating their next move and throwing scissors as a counter could win you the round. There's no optimal throw to make, but one thing you definitely want to avoid is making the same gesture with both hands like Woo-suk here, because then you'll be locked into that move during the final stage. Going purely based on probability, you would only have to win a maximum of 6 rounds in a row before you were guaranteed to survive. So, by watching your opponent's patterns and keeping your own choices as random as possible, this actually might be one of the easier games to win.
When Gi-hyun gets home, he finds the recruiter already there waiting for him. The man forces him to play Russian roulette, but Gi-hyun fearlessly accepts the challenge even though he could easily cheat and kill the man himself. The game gets all the way down to the final chamber, and now the recruiter knows that he's going to die. But instead of breaking the rules, he follows through and loses the game. After tracking them back to the hotel, Jun-ho finds the criminal tied up in one of the rooms, and he tells him exactly where to find Gi-hyun. Discovering the crime scene, he immediately tries placing the man under arrest, but they quickly knock out the detective and take him prisoner instead. That's when Gi-hyun finds a business card in the recruiter's pocket with nothing on it but an address and a date, leading him to a club in the city on Halloween night. When Jun-ho finally wakes up, he explains that the two of them met back on the island while he was looking for his brother, and they decide that they're going to work together to stop the games. Taking them back to his apartment, Gi-hyun shows them the massive stash of cash and weapons that he's been building up over time, and now all they need is a team to help them use it. For the first part of their plan, they hire a dentist to remove Ji-hyun's tooth, replacing it with a hidden transmitter to help them track his location. The criminal uses his connections to put together a team full of ex-military specialists who are willing to do whatever it takes as long as they get paid. There's only one night left before they make their move on the club, but only Gi-hyun and Woo-suk can enter without blowing their cover, while the rest of them are going to wait outside as a backup. He's worried that something might go wrong, but the criminal reassures him that it's all under control, never realizing that they're walking straight into a trap. On Halloween night, Gi-hyun and his team arrive outside the club where the streets are full of people in costumes, and they realize that the front man must have chosen this night so that he wouldn't stand out from the crowd. Heading inside, the two of them begin making their way across the dance floor while Jun-ho keeps a lookout. But that's when he spots a group of pink guards headed their way. The detective rushes in after them, but before he can get there, one of them knocks out Woo-suk with a taser while the other silently approaches Gi-hyun and leads him away without saying a word.
Okay, Gi-hyun here is about to put himself in a deadly situation for absolutely no reason, and after coming this far, they don't want to miss the opportunity, because it's probably the last chance that they're ever going to get. Think about it this way, the recruiter was able to find Gi-hyun's apartment after interrogating Woo-suk here, and I'm sure he checked in with the bosses pretty regularly. By now, they probably know he's dead, which means that they also know that Gi-hyun is on his way, so the element of surprise isn't going to help. But what they might not be aware of are what resources Gi-hyun has to work with and how many mercenaries he has on his side. Now, Gi-hyun's team knew that the frontman would be here based on what the recruiter told him, but they can't reveal themselves until they visually confirm he's there. Otherwise, he might escape. He chose to meet at the club on Halloween night because his costume would blend in with the crowd. But this actually works both ways. Gi-hyun here could have had his mercenaries dress up in costumes themselves and get to the club early. That way the place would be swarming with teammates who could watch his back, or for him to use as meat shields if anything goes wrong. He could have even dressed them up like guards just to add another level of confusion to the mix and make it that much harder for his ops to maintain control of the situation. Since they knew the meeting place ahead of time, he should have also had some of his men watching the place early. That way, they could alert him to any strange activity that might be a sign of the frontman's presence, allowing them to get the jump on him instead of the other way around.
The mask leads him out to a back alley where the two of them get into a white limo. He's getting closer to the front man, but he won't get to meet him in person yet. Instead, he confronts Gi-hyun by speaking through a golden piggy bank, reminding him that everyone who died in the game was only there because they chose to be. To Gi-hyun, he thinks that whether they volunteered for it or not, taking advantage of unfortunate people is morally wrong, and he'll do whatever it takes to stop them once and for all. All of a sudden, a sniper shoots out the tires on the vans, leaving Gi-hyun stranded without any help. Realizing that he's trapped, he decides that there's only one thing left for him to do. If he can't take down the games from the outside, then he's going to do it from the inside, and that's when he volunteers to go back in. Hesitating for just a moment, the frontman finally accepts the deal and floods the back of the car with gas to knock him unconscious. The moment that he's out, the frontman rolls down the window, revealing that he was right there the whole time. But this is exactly why Gi-hyun had that tracker installed in his tooth, because getting caught was always his plan B. When Gi-hyun wakes up, he finds himself right back in the same bunk where it all started, and they even gave him the same number, player 456. As the others start shuffling around, the guards come in and announce that it's time for the games to begin. Over the next 6 days, they'll be completely cut off from the outside world as they compete in a series of challenges. And just like before, the winners take home a cash prize that could change their lives forever. What none of them realize yet is that these games are about to turn deadly. The lights dim as a giant piggy bank lowers down from the ceiling, and in the end, it will be filled with 45.6 billion won. But this time around, the rules are a little different. At the end of each challenge, they'll be given a chance to vote for their way out of the games early, and split the prize money that they've built up so far. The last one to sign up is Gi-hyun himself, hoping that he can at least use his knowledge to help these idiots survive the first round. On their way to the first challenge, Gi-hyun is surprised to run into his old friend Young Bae, who's upset that he's been ghosting him for the last 3 years. The poor dude got divorced and lost custody of his kid, but Gi-hyun warns him to follow his lead because he has no idea how much worse his life is about to get. Now it's time for the first challenge, and everyone knows that there's only one way to really get this party started, with a good old-fashioned game of red light, green light. As the players take the field, Gi-hyun notices that his boys probably should have been there by now, and that's when he makes a shocking discovery. Reaching into his mouth, he pulls out the fake tooth, only to realize that the locator is gone. The organizers found it and planted it on some random fisherman back at the docks, which means that now no one is coming to save him.
Okay, it's a good thing the games aren't an IQ test, because this guy right here just might be the biggest dumbass to ever walk the earth. At least we're all on the same page here, but Gi-hyun, my boy, it looks like you just f***ed up. The god's honest truth is that your plan was terrible from the start. I mean, these guys were the ones who put a tracker inside you first, so did you really think that they would fall for the same trick? And sure, you paid the doctor some money to keep quiet, but you had him do the operation right in your own apartment. They've probably been watching you the whole time, so at least pick a better safe house for your top secret dentist appointment if that's what your whole plan was relying on. The craziest part of all this is that you still could have left, but even after surviving this one before, you voluntarily signed up for a second time. I'm sorry, but at that point you honestly deserved to get killed. You had no way of knowing that the first game would even be red light, green light, but what you knew for sure is that every single person here is probably going to die. So no matter how bad you want to take down the games, you were a total idiot for not leaving while you still had the chance. The first time around, I kind of felt bad for you, but this time, Gi-hyun, whew, you f***ed up. Now the good news is that we already know the best strategies for surviving red light, green light. The key is to keep a stable stance with a low center of gravity and move at a steady pace so that you don't get tripped up. Two things need to happen before bullets start flying. The doll's head needs to spin all the way around, and she needs to announce red light. So if you watch her head and listen for the sound of her voice while avoiding any other distractions, then you'll know exactly when to stop. I'd also stay behind the crowd and try to use the other players as meat shields for as long as possible. Gi-hyun's going to be tempted to save them, but if I were him, I'd be careful about revealing what I knew too early. These other players all want to win, and if they realize that he has inside information, this could put a target on Gi-hyun's back. So for now, I'd rather blend in with the crowd and let nature take its course.
Before the game can start, Gi-hyun runs to the front of the crowd and warns them all that getting eliminated means that you will be shot, but they obviously don't believe a word that he says. The first rounds go by without anyone being killed, but everything changes when a bee lands on this girl's neck. When she goes to smack it off, she gets absolutely blasted straight in the dome, and now they realize that Gi-hyun here wasn't kidding around. All of a sudden, more and more of them start getting mowed down as they can't resist panicking, until finally, the ones left standing are the players who stayed perfectly still. Now that they believe him, Gi-hyun comes up with a strategy to have the shortest players line up behind the tallest, where the doll can't see them. Everyone starts working together except for this purple-haired rapper Thanos here, who starts pushing people over just to get them eliminated. Thanks to Gi-hyun's leadership, most of the survivors actually make it past the finish line with a lot of time to spare. But for some reason, this guy 444 here ends up getting shot in the leg. Seeing that he's still alive, Gi-hyun rushes over to save him just as time is about to run out. But this soldier No-hyul finishes him off with a shot to the head, since he technically lost the game. Back inside, the guards announce that 91 players have been eliminated, leaving 365 of them still to go. So far, the total prize money is 9.1 billion won, meaning that they'll all get 25 million if they decide to split it. Now it's time for them to vote, and Gi-hyun tries to convince them all to quit, but they start wanting to use his knowledge to help them win. A lot of them aren't happy with the prize yet, and in the end, it all comes down to one vote, with the last player deciding that they're going to stay for another round. After getting their food for the night, a few of the players gather around to ask Gi-hyun what's coming up next. He explains that he thinks it's dalgona, a game where they have to carve out a shape of a honeycomb without breaking it, and tells them all to pick the triangle because it's the easiest choice. One old man says that they should keep it a secret so more players will get eliminated, but Gi-hyun insists that they need to help everyone make it through alive.
Okay, Gi-hyun here still thinks that he can save everyone, but he's missing one extremely important detail for why this won't work. Some of them won't vote to leave until they've covered enough money to pay off their debt, and they actually want more players to get eliminated because it just means more cash for them. Just look at the old man here. He told Gi-hyun to keep his information a secret because he wants as many people as possible to get eliminated during the next round. But what he doesn't realize is that we can turn this logic back around on him. This boomer owes 10 billion won for loans that he couldn't pay back, but the total prize money for the whole thing is only 45.6 billion. Yeah, in order for him to fully pay off his debt, only 4 players can be left alive, which means that he won't quit until 452 of them are dead. Now, back at the beginning of the game, the guards listed off several players with astronomical debt, so the way that I see it, they should systematically target the players who owe the most money. Not only will they be taking out the competition and earning themselves more cash, but they'll be dramatically lowering the barrier before everyone is willing to vote to end the game early. The most important rule of Squid Game is knowing when to make tactical sacrifices, and as a survivor, Gi-hyun should know that it's only a matter of time before they all turn on each other. So by organizing them early against the ones who are guaranteed to be a problem later, he'll be able to get the best outcome for the players who actually deserve it.
Meanwhile, Thanos confronts another player, Young-gi, for getting him involved in a crypto scam, and he's planning on taking his prize money as a way to get back what he lost. The rapper starts beating the crap out of him right in front of everyone, but that's when player 1 steps in and kicks his ass without breaking a sweat, putting Grimace here back in his place. That night, the man apologizes to Gi-hyun for voting to stay in the game, explaining this whole made-up backstory about needing the money to help his pregnant wife. Gi-hyun here doesn't know any better because they've never met in person, but he has no idea that he's really speaking to the front man himself. The next morning, the music starts up again as they announce that it's time for the second challenge, and Gi-hyun's friend reminds him that they're all relying on his advice. The only problem is, they quickly realize that this game is completely different, meaning that even he has no idea what's about to happen next. And now, some of them are already starting to turn against him. They're immediately given 10 minutes to get into groups of 5, and Gi-hyun quickly teams up with 4 other players: 001, his friend 390, ex-Marine 388, and the Crypto Bros' pregnant wife, Jun-hee. Meanwhile, the others all filter into their teams, and a group of the weakest players, who no one picked, eventually join together, meaning that it's officially time for the game to start. For this round, all 5 players are going to have their legs tied together while they race around a circular track, but it's not that simple. At 5 different points, they'll have to complete an individual minigame before they can move on, and if they don't make it across the finish line before the timer runs out, then everyone on the team is going to die. And they'll have to choose who's going to complete each one before the race begins. Talking it over, the team eventually settles on their strategy, with 388 taking Gongji because he had 4 older sisters who helped him learn it, and Ji-hyun holding down the anchor position with JG. The first 2 teams hit the track, and everything starts off strong when player 16 wins Takji on the first try, but it quickly falls apart when 198 can't hit his stone. As for the others, they end up stuck on challenges 3 and 4, and Ji-hyun's team uses the time to practice each of their games. The player finally makes a hit, only for it to not count because he was over the line, and he gets so nervous that he pees his pants, knowing that they're completely screwed. In the end, neither team is able to get around the circle on time, and all 10 of them are suddenly gunned down as soon as the timer hits 0.
Okay. This is interesting because on an individual level, each player only has to complete one simple game, but even if one player on your team fails, then everyone ends up dead. On the plus side, they know exactly what the games are going to be, and every single one of them is based on skill instead of pure luck. So whether or not they survive is going to come down to their strategy, teamwork, and picking the right player for each job. First up is Takji, and the goal here is to flip your opponent's tile by hitting it with yours. I mean, it looks simple enough, but it all comes down to your angle. You need to aim for the edge of their tile and try to hit it with the flat side of yours to give it the best chance of flipping. For Gi-hyun's team, they've already let Jun-hee take the job, but if they had to pick somebody else, I'd want to pick a player with good hand-eye coordination, like someone who plays a lot of darts or baseball. Flying stone is exactly what it looks like. They have to throw a flat stone to knock over another one that's about 3 meters away. The key here is to stay focused and hit the first shot, because going back and forth to pick it up wastes way too much time. Take a stable stance and throw the stone flat with a slight spin to keep it steady in the air. If you aim for the base of the target, this will give you the best chance of scoring a good hit. Just like before, you want someone with a good accuracy for the job, but Since the stone is heavier than in the paper envelope, we'll use our strongest thrower here. Third is gongji, which is also known as Korean jacks. For this one, the players need to remember a complicated series of steps and execute them without making a single mistake. We need someone with steady hands, good memory, and who won't fold under pressure. Gi-hyun's team already picked 388, but my ideal candidate would be someone like Juggler or even a brain surgeon who can lock in and get it done on the first try. Fourth is spinning top, and this one comes down to pure physics, so it should be easy as long as you have the right technique. When you spin a top, it gains angular momentum that resists the pull of gravity, and the faster the spin, the more stable that it is. The first step is to stay calm while winding the string, then get low to the ground and snap your wrist in a quick, smooth motion to give it the most spin. Anyone should be able to do this, but since the next round uses feet instead of hands, that should make it easy to decide who should take the job and who to save for the final challenge. Now, last but not least, we have JG, which is basically like hacky sack. And the best strategy here is to use the inside of your foot to make a light, controlled kick that won't knock you off balance. If you've got a soccer player or a dancer in the group, then they're the perfect person to come in clutch here at the end, and by making sure that they have the best player in each role, they might actually survive another round.
After that, it's time for player 120's team to go, and they nervously approach the starting line as they wait for the race to begin. The team starts off on a bad foot as they struggle to get past Tak-chi, but the woman eventually figures it out and they're able to move on. At the next stage, player 007 here misses his first throw for the flying stone, but they're able to get through it on the second try. When they get to gongji, the old woman clears it on her third attempt, leaving them with 2 more challenges remaining and only 2 minutes left to go. All of a sudden, this crazy lady number 44 here starts tweaking out when she can't get past her game. But 120 quickly slaps the crap out of her and forces the woman to lock in. Making sure that nobody looks, she gets them through the final challenge just in time. And everyone celebrates for the first 2 teams to actually survive the race. The other groups begin taking their turns 2 at a time, and Thanos' team makes it through without being killed, but not everyone is so lucky. The surviving teams are let out of the arena after each round, until finally it's only Gi-hyun's crew and another group of NPCs that still have to go. They're off to an early lead, flying through the first 2 challenges with no problem, and when it gets to gongji, the Marine absolutely crushes it faster than anyone else in the game so far. Now it's time for 001 to play spinning top, but that's when everything starts to go wrong. No matter how hard he tries, this guy can't seem to get it right, and he's wasting valuable time with every mistake. He starts crashing out even harder every time he makes a bad throw, and for a second, it looks like he's going to get them all killed. But he finally gets through it with only a few seconds left. On the final challenge, he helps Gi-hyun save the last kick, and they make it across the finish line at the last possible moment, only to watch as the other team gets eliminated right in front of them. After the game, the guards return to announce the latest results. A total of 110 more players were just knocked out, leaving 255 of them still alive with a cut of 79 million each, if they decide to quit. It's time for them to vote again, and everyone still has different opinions on what they should choose, but it's getting a lot more personal now that almost half of them have been killed. Ji-hyun here promises to help his friends pay off their debts if they get out, but they all cast their vote to end the games. But in the end, the yeses completely blow the no's out of the water, and it looks like they'll be staying after all. The next morning, the players all wake up and head for the game hall, where it's time for them to start the third challenge. This time, they all step into a large chamber with a massive carousel at the center, and the host announces that they'll be playing a game called Mingle. As the platform spins, the voice will call out a random number, giving them 30 seconds to form a matching group and make it to one of the doors before they're eliminated.
Okay, this game is actually the most terrifying one yet because it's designed to thin out the herd with virtually no skill involved. Since the organizers know how many players are left and what number they're going to call, then they can mathematically guarantee to eliminate exactly as many players as they want after every round. For example, with 255 players at the start of the game, if they call out groups of 10, then they have at least 5 people to die at the end of the round, and there's nothing that you can do besides hope you find a team. Now, with that being said, there might be a way to give ourselves a strategic advantage if we look at the big picture here. The room only has 2 exits. Above them is a board that serves as a player count and timer, and also where the soldiers come in at the end of each round. This makes these areas the main source of threat, so basic human psychology is going to cause most players to subconsciously focus their attention here. But that would be a mistake because they're also the only 2 places with a significant gap between the doors. When it comes down to positioning, you want to place your team on the very edge of the platform and aim yourself towards the middle of the largest area of doors that's possible. It would be best to organize into as large a group as you can because it's always easier to quickly break down into smaller teams than run around trying to find the one extra person who you might need. The good news is that they have an easy way to identify who they should team up with. All of the X's should just start working together. That way they'll be working in one massive 116-player team, where the O's are busy scrambling and fighting amongst their smaller alliances. The more O's that get taken out, the more doors they'll have to choose from, the more money they'll get when they win, and the better their chances will be of actually voting their way out next time. So there's literally no downside to taking this approach.
The platform starts to spin, all while a silly kid's song is blasting in the background, when suddenly it comes to an abrupt stop as the voice calls out 10 players. With 30 seconds on the clock, Ji-hyun's team grabs the crazy lady and narrowly survives the first round, but it's only going to get worse from there. Outside, anyone who didn't make it is brutally gunned down, and this time, No-yeol doesn't interfere with the other guards, worried that they'll kill her if she tries to stop them again. More and more of them are eliminated over the next several rounds, and friends start turning into enemies as they're forced to betray each other for their own survival. The old woman is almost killed when her own son leaves her for dead during a round that needs 3 people. But Gi-hyun and 001 manage to save her life just in time. During the next round, player 95 trips before she can make it to the door, and the crypto bro, Myung-gi, takes her spot at the last second. Player 120 here is furious at him for getting her killed, but he argues that she wasn't going to make it anyway. So, technically, he saved their lives. And the others have to admit that he's actually right. The final round calls for just 2 players in each room, and 001 ends up finding a place with Gi-hyun's friend Young-bae. But another player actually gets there first. Without hesitation, player 1 breaks the guy's neck and takes the room for the 2 of them, knowing that it's the only way that they'll possibly survive. Back at the bunks, the crypto bro pulls his ex-girlfriend over for a private conversation, saying how he wants to give their relationship a second chance. He thinks that everyone will vote to end the game now that they've made enough money, but Thanos here notices what he's up to and decides to use it against him. Young-bae comes back to the group and says that there are still more O's than X's, but they only need to convince 5 more people to vote no, and they'll all get to go home. That's when the guards announce that they're up to 356 million won per person. But while the votes are being cast, they're not allowing anyone to influence the other players' decisions. It's another close race, and in the end, the yeses have the noes beat by only 2 votes, with only player 001 left to go. Stepping forward, the man votes no to tie up the count, which means that they'll have to vote again. But now, the guards are making them wait until the next morning. After dinner, the group starts discussing their strategy, desperately trying to figure out how they can win the next vote. The 2 teams almost break out into a fistfight when player 226 here starts mouthing off, and when Ji-hyun opens up his meal, he realizes that they've been given a bunch of forks, which can easily be turned into weapons if anything goes down.
Okay, this situation is playing out exactly like we said before. Right now, they could all be walking away with 356 million won. That's almost 250,000 USD, which should be more than enough to get them back on their feet. Half of them want to take the money and go home, but they're being held back by the other half of players who are still so greedy that they're willing to risk everyone's lives for the chance at a bigger payout. There's only 2 games left with 100 players to go, which means that the next challenges are going to be an absolute bloodbath, and that's even if they survive the night without the 2 opposing teams tearing each other apart. Gi-hyun's worried because he's seen how this stuff goes down before, but if he was just using his brain for once, then he'd realize that there's an extremely easy way to end this nightmare once and for all. Now, besides the old man, everyone in this room has around a few $100 million in debt, up to a maximum of $4 billion for the second highest person who's probably already dead. When he won the games last time, Gi-hyun walked away with $45.6 billion, and he still has a ton of it left. Instead of offering to pay off just the debts of his group, he should extend that offer to the other side and tell them to take out anyone who disagrees. Once he reminds them of how dangerous the next 2 games will be, I think they'll start to see things his way. Gi-hyun's money combined with the $356 million they're already getting should easily be enough to convince a few more of them to get on their side. And that's all they need to win the vote that finally gets them out of there.
Meanwhile, Thanos here finds player 125 hiding in a bathroom stall. He starts threatening to kill the poor kid unless he changes his vote, but that's when the crypto bro decides that it's time to step in. The kid rushes in to attack as a massive brawl breaks out, but Thanos quickly takes him to the ground and starts pummeling him across the face. Just when it looks like he's done for, he pulls out the fork and stabs the rapper twice in the neck, letting him bleed to death as he takes cover in an empty stall. When the survivors make it back to the room, they both claim that the other side were the ones who started the fight, but nobody can prove what really happened either way. After taking a quick head count, the X's realize that they outnumber the O's by exactly 1 person. But Gi-hyun here knows that this isn't necessarily a good thing. Waiting until the others are gone, he explains to his small group that things are about to get violent because they're going to try and kill off the competition before the next vote. The others want to go on the offensive first, but Gi-hyun here explains that he has a different plan in mind. And if it's going to work, then they need to focus on fighting their real enemies, the ones who actually run the game. His plan is to let the 2 sides fight it out, but when the guards step in to break up the riot, they'll grab their guns and use them to battle all the way to the top. Gi-hyun's crew hides under their beds just in time, because as soon as everything goes quiet, the other team sneaks across and starts brutally killing everyone on the other side. The room breaks out into total chaos, with dozens of them ending up dead before the guards eventually step in. But while they're busy checking the dead bodies, that's when Gi-hyun here finally springs his trap. All of a sudden, his team jumps up and takes the soldiers by surprise, overpowering them and stealing their weapons right out of their hands. Opening fire, they're able to kill off most of the guards and force the others to fall back, but this was only step 1 of Gi-hyun's master plan. Turning to the others, he explains that they're going after the people in charge and offers anyone who wants to volunteer a chance to join them. A few more of the X's step forward, and after gathering as many players as they can, they start carefully making their way deeper into the facility. A huge shootout takes place when they run into some more guards on the steps, but the players actually manage to hold their own. Once the firing stops, they keep advancing further up the stairs, only to run into even more troops when they come around the next bend. Grabbing a mask from a dead soldier, Gi-hyun takes Young Bae and makes a break for the control room, leaving the others to hold off any reinforcements that come along. They're able to use the mask to open up a secret door, but another group of soldiers cuts them off before they can get there. Calling for backup, Player 1 says that he's on his way, and they send the Marine Dae-ho here to grab more ammo. He starts gathering up everything that he can find, but when it comes time to run back towards the battle, he suddenly freezes up and refuses to take another step. Upstairs, Player 1 pretends like he's going to flank around, but as soon as his teammates let their guard down, he finally drops the act and shoots them both in the back, leaving Gi-hyun no choice but to surrender when he runs out of ammo. After putting the mask back on, the frontman immediately kills Young Bae as punishment for what he's done. Horrified, Gi-hyun screams as his only friend drops dead right in front of him. and the frontman takes him prisoner to bring him back to the games. But to see what happens next, we'll have to wait for the next season to find out.
Squid Game Season 2. Was it worth the wait? Was it as good as the first one? Do you even care? Nah, I didn't think so. That was cool, and I can't wait to see what they cook up with on the next season. We'll just have to wait years, I guess. But anyway, let me know down in the comments if you guys would have done anything differently. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the Guy. We'll see you on the next video, and have a damn good day.